rows of this color.
Oh, 10 rows. Okay.
And then before I start to split, I just folded this down and did a whip stitch all the way around and tacked it down. So it makes a cute little, it's a cute little cuff. I like it. And like how the little neon pop is there on the top like that.
I like that. It's a little thicker.
Yeah,
Not sliding down your shoe.
exactly. So everyone who's joining, if you want to say hi in the chat, let us know where you're tuning in from. I'm always curious to see where people are tuning in from. I'm going to open the chat really quick here.
That's why
I see some familiar names in the audience of customers that I know from my online store. So we must have common clients, Angie.
I put it out there on Instagram, so might have just picked up some, but I know we have one common client. I don't see her on here yet, so.
Well, we've got people tuning in from Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, London. Is that London in the UK or London somewhere in the US? I know there's like Londons throughout the United States. Monroe, Roswell. So we've got Georgia. We have Gail from New Jersey, the UK. So we've got someone from London, UK. That's exciting.
Yeah. New Jersey and a peach sweater. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've got I don't know if you guys can see, I've got a little peach sweater action right there. I'm going to turn the light on in my office. It's a little dark. Ah, that's better.
Well, should we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we got 20 something on them, so they'll keep joining and I keep adding them.
Okay,
perfect. So thank you everybody for joining today. I'm so excited to have Aimee come and chat with us for a little while. For those of you who don't know me, because I know we put this out on Ravelry, I'm sorry, not on Ravelry, but Instagram. But I'm Angie Reach, and I am located in Grayson, Georgia, which is the metro Atlanta. So I've been here for quite a while. And but just in 2019, right before everything fell apart, I opened my store and I converted a shuttle bus into a yarn bus. And her name is Pearl, and she has her own identity. So basically, you'll see me refer to her as her all the time. But so that's when I started, September of 19. I actually met you, Aimee. I took your lecture in Bow Knitting Live in 2020.
Yeah.
And one of your most wonderful suggestions in that lecture was to have samples that would fit everyone to be able to try on. I remember I thought about doing it my size because I'm usually 2X. And it's been a blessing to have that because everybody's been able to try them on. So I thank you for that. And then I just started, sending you a few little things here and there to see whether or not I could get you to start carrying the yarn. And finally I had the opportunity, but then it wasn't on a good note to a certain extent, but yet it was it was a blessing for me to have you a part of Pearl. And I guess I've had it for a year now, I think. So having a lot of fun, a lot of people enjoy it, but finally have an online presence. I'm going to retire in 15 days from the corporate world.
Wow.
And after 43 years and at one place, so I'm just about to explode. So my online presence will get better because I'll have more time, but I do have the your yarn online now as well. So things will start to expand even more for me. So, but the Traveling Yarn Yogi I cover 4 hours from my home right now. So that puts me into the Carolinas, into Tennessee, Florida, almost to Florida. I'll have to stretch it a little bit, but all over Georgia. So, but I'm just excited to have you and everyone to join us today. And basically it just asked, it told you it was a little informal, and I was just going to let you go. So
All right, let's go. First thing I'm going to do is mute my notifications because my computer is beeping here. So let me just mute this. There we go. So we won't have any interruptions. So I just want to say thanks, Angie, for hosting me. I really love these virtual events because it gives me a chance to meet people from all over the world that I wouldn't necessarily have a chance to meet. And yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for having me. So I'll just start out telling you a little bit about Bien Aimee. Bien Aimee started in 2015. So this was my yarn company that I started in 2015, but I started my adventure as an entrepreneur and starting in 2008. I started out by opening a cafe and a yarn shop. A lot of people ask me why I did that. I never worked in a restaurant before this. I just had this idea in my mind that I wanted to make a place where people, knitters, could come and knit and have like a cup of tea and a cake, and for it to be a non-smoking restaurant. Because at the time I was living in Paris, and everywhere you went, everybody was smoking everywhere in all the restaurants. And I used to go to a knit group that I hosted on meetup.com, and we would meet at different cafes all over Paris. And when we would get home, our knitting smelled like smoke. And so I was really annoying, you know? And so I always told my husband, I was like, oh, I really want to open a cafe that's like a non-smoking cafe where our knitters can come and knit and just relax. And he was like, do it. And so that's what I did. In 2008, I opened my first cafe, my only cafe, called Loisivete. Loisivete is in the 13th where I live. So it's really close to where my first apartment was. And this is how the story began. So I started out by selling other people's yarn. So at heart, I'm a sales girl. I've always worked in sales and marketing. Before I moved to France, you know, my summer jobs were working at the Clinique counter at the local mall, selling makeup. I love skincare and things like that. And I was really good at selling things that I was passionate about. So I was passionate about skincare. I was passionate about makeup. And I was really good at selling yarn because I love to knit. And so when I opened Loisivete, I knew that having just a cafe wasn't going to bring in enough money to support my family. And so I wanted to supplement by selling the yarns that I kept like smuggling home in my suitcase when I'd go home to visit my parents in the US. And so I started selling brands like Koigu, Lorna's Laces. Do you guys remember Lorna's Laces? This is like one of the first brands that I brought into my cafe. Sweet Georgia, Madeline Tosh, Blue Moon Fiber Art, Socks That Rock, you know, all of these like brands that I love knitting with that I wanted to bring to France to introduce to the French knitters. And I did that for about 7 years. And around the 7th year, after I'd paid off my bank loan and I owned my company all by myself, had no one to pay, you know, a mortgage to or anything, I was like, now what am I going to do? And that's when I started getting the idea of making my own yarn company. And so in 2015, I started Bien Aimee. I started Bien Aimee in a very small little shop that was 300 meters from my cafe. My Paris apartment was so small that I didn't even pass by that stage of being a kitchen dyer. You know, a lot of the dyers who work today, they always start at home and then they transitioned their businesses outside. So I never had that opportunity because I just literally couldn't do it in my Paris apartment. It was just too small. And at the time I had 2 small children plus my husband. So there was no way I could do that. And so I rented a very small space to start dyeing in. And I taught myself how to dye yarn in 2015. And through the years, so we fast forward to now we're in 2022, I have transitioned through 3 studios here, all in the 13th. And in March of 2020, we landed where we are right now. And this is what I consider to be our forever home. We'll probably never move to a nice big studio here. We have about 680 meters squared for us to work in. I have a staff of 20 who work with me, who helps me do the dyeing. Plus I have my online operations here as well and my wholesale team. And we did everything here in Paris in the 13th within walking distance of my apartment. So That's where I am today.
That's awesome. I've seen your lives doing the dye pots and so forth.
We dye in pots. So that's like something to say too, because we do not use pans and we do not use like warming cabinets. We dye everything in pots. I guess that would be considered kettle dyeing. And
Yes.
that's our style. And I feel like that kind of sets us apart from a lot of other dyers in the industry. And that's why our colors look so uniquely ours, because of the way we dye inside of the pot.
How many skeins do you usually dye within?
It depends on what base. So like you like to order KUMO, I think Super Sock and Sport. All of those we dye in batches of 5. Mohair silk we dye in batches of 10. So that means we do 10 skeins inside one pot.
Okay.
So yeah, but we don't do anything above 10 skeins at a time. I think mohair silk is the only one that we dye 10 skeins, other than if we're dyeing mini skeins. So sometimes if we're dyeing like 25 gram or 20 gram skeins, then we will go up to 20 or 25 skeins. But that all equals to roughly about 500 grams of yarn, roughly about 500, like 5 skeins of, yeah, I don't even know what the ounces are because I do everything in metrics here in Europe.
I understand that. Well, what do you how many colors do you come up new within a year? Is it vary or?
It really varies. It really depends on where my creativity is taking me. I want to say this year has been a big boom for new colors because I have been traveling again. And I draw a lot of inspiration from my travels. During the pandemic was a hard time for me to develop new colors because I wasn't really traveling. I was really kind of in survival mode that first year of the pandemic when lockdown happened. We had so much going on. We moved studios, and I started off with a new staff as well. I had a lot of turnover. And so I was really in survival mode working a lot in the studio, and my creativity kind of went like this. I don't know if it happened to you, but like I don't think I knit the first 18 months of the pandemic. Like I literally didn't touch my knitting. So as a way to kind of get myself back to knitting, my husband bought me my knitting machine that I kind of show sometimes in my lives. And just kind of joking, because I was like, oh, maybe I should buy a knitting machine. He went on to the version of like eBay here in France called Le Bon Coin, and he just searched for knitting machines, and apparently like any estate sale you'll find knitting machines. There's like, you know, people who have passed away and they've got a knitting machine to give away. And so he found a really beautiful vintage one from the 60s for 50 euros in perfect condition. And it was like, it just seemed like the person never used the knitting machine. So I really enjoyed using the knitting machine during the pandemic and teaching myself a new skill. And now it's become an integral part of when I swatch. So I wanted to show you. So this is a swatch that I did with 3 colors from my Miyazaki collection. So this is this top blue color is called Fujimoto. And the middle color, I did a fade here into Grande Marée. And then I had it fade into a third color called Ponyo. If I were to hand knit this swatch, it probably would have taken me 2 or 3 days because I'm a very slow knitter. This took me less than 15 minutes on my knitting machine.
Did you self-teach yourself? I mean,
I did.
oh, wow.
I did. I Googled knitting machines. I actually Googled the brand of my knitting machine. Apparently it was very popular in Germany. I don't speak German, so I was watching all these like German videos on YouTube of all these knitters using it. So I just kind of copy them. I would watch it and then I go on my machine and do what they were doing. And that's how I taught myself how to machine knit. I think that hand knitters have a basic advantage on machine knitting because you already understand the construction of the knitting when you hand knit. And so when I was building my stitches on my knitting machine, I understand exactly which way to, you know, put the stitches on. If a stitch fell down, I knew how to pick it up and put it back onto the needle and things like that. And I also have a very basic machine that has no bells and whistles. So I would recommend if anyone's really wanting to try machine knitting, try to get a used machine that's like kind of older from the 60s or 70s. They're out there. There's like a ton of them. And those are the I think those are the best machines to learn on because then you don't have so many dials to deal with and so many buttons to push and things like that. And just give it a go. It's really fun.
I have one in my, well, I have a new one, an L150 that's still in the box because I am.
Is that the silver?
LK 150, I think.
Yeah, I've got that one. I just got that one.
Well, it's
It's
still in the
sitting over
box
here on
because
my
I'm
work table.
intimidated with it, but I swear by the end of this year, that's my goal, to have learned how to use that machine, because I've watched you make it so easy. And I think swatching would be an awesome opportunity to
That's a great
utilize
way to
that.
start with the machine, is just to swatch, mix colors together. I love making stripes. I'm actually started to plan out my first sweater garment on the knitting machine. So it's just going to do a basic drop shoulders. It's pretty much like a rectangle, two rectangles, and then the sleeves, and then I'll seam it all together. That's really
Would that be
fun.
your
So I look
pattern?
forward to. Sorry,
Would this be your pattern?
I think I will write a pattern for it. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, awesome.
yeah.
Have you done much pattern making?
Have always been interested in pattern writing, but there's always something else that I was busy doing and never have enough time to sit down to design. But I've actually made it a goal for this year to put out hopefully a design by the end of this year. So a first design should be coming out. I have made myself many things that I've just knit for myself, but just never wrote anything down, or just, so I'm going to try.
Awesome, that would be great. But I know that there's a process, and sometimes with the numbers and the math and all that, that's where the no fun comes into play. So, but anyway, I also wanted to ask you, I want you to say your name. I wanted to find out where you came up with your name for your yarn. I mean, is there any special meaning for that?
Well, my name is Aimee, so I spell it Aimee. And growing up in Kansas, that's where I'm originally from. We just say Aimee. But I was named for my great grandmother's sister, who was French, and her name was Aimee. And so it's almost like my parents kind of, they like decided my destiny after they named me Aimee. I went on to study French in school. When you're in 7th grade, you have to choose a foreign language. I chose French over Spanish, and I continued to study French, all with this optic that I had been named for someone who was French. And so I was like, I have to kind of live up to this legacy. And so when I was making my yarn company and I was thinking about a brand, I was honestly just talking with my husband and a friend. And there's an expression in French called la bien aimée. It's like my beloved. And I was like, you know what? Yarn is like the beloved thing to all knitters. Like all knitters love their yarn. And so my husband, he calls me often his bien aimée. He will say ma bien aimée, which means my beloved. And so he just said, you should just call it la bien aimée. And that's how it kind of came to be.
That's awesome. My bien, no, I make it two syllables, and you're making it one.
This is how you pronounce la. It's la bien. And so you don't actually pronounce the N. The N is kind of silent and it goes into a real nasally. So you say la bien, and then aimée.
La bien.
Aimée. So if you're pronouncing it phonetically, it's like EH-MAY. Aimée.
Okay.
La bien aimée.
All right, we won't waste any time with me doing it. I'm gonna practice on my own. I'll press record and hit and keep practicing, because my Southern drawl was just murder.
I think it's adorable. I love the way that everyone pronounces my brand. I have a lot of Americans who say la bien aimée, which I think is adorable because it's like a mix of French and American English. One thing I do recommend is to say la bien aimée. Do not say la bien. La bien doesn't mean anything. It just means good. And so if you want to really get the full expression, it's la bien aimée, which means beloved.
Okay, that is a good tool, because everyone wants to say it's just la bien. Not so perfect. Well, you were going to share a few things with us.
Yeah, so I already shared this swatch because you said that you carry Super Sock.
I do.
And so I wanted to show a few things that I had in Super Sock here. This is a new pattern called the Marta socks. Marta, so Marta socks. And this is by Vanessa Pelisa. I think that Angie's going to send this out in an email to everyone who registered. This is a new sock pattern that just came out yesterday. And we used our new color Fujimoto for this sock. It has the most adorable little picot cuff here, you guys. Oh. So Someone on my staff knit this sample for me. If I were to knit this for myself, I'd probably just make the cuff really short because I like shorties and do this cute little picot edge on here. Isn't that adorable?
Very.
So this is the Marta socks in Super Sock. And this is in our new color called Fujimoto. So Fujimoto is currently available only through our online shop right now because it's a brand new color. And it's part of our Miyazaki collection. But the other colors of our Miyazaki collection, so like Ponyo and Sosuke, which is one of our first colors, is available for wholesale. So if you guys love this Miyazaki color, you should tell Angie and she should order some for Pearl. So another favorite of mine is this sweater here. This is called the So Faded sweater by Andrea Mowry. I think that you guys have heard about this pattern before. I used 3 colors to make a very subtle fade. So I went from using Winter to Nymeria right here in the middle. And then you'll see at the bottom here, we've got a nice little gray with these like really beautiful pink pops. And that's called Fury.
Is that sport or Super Sock?
This is Super Sock. So we're still on Super Sock here. I think I have one more sample to show you with Super Sock. So this is the So Faded sweater by Andrea Mowry. What I really love about the way Andrea writes top-down raglan is that she uses kind of syncopated increases. And so it doesn't increase at the same rate in the front and the back. And I feel like it makes a much better fit on the sleeve as well. And I really love this neckline that she has designed into this crew neck. So it's not really right here. It's a little bit lower. It's a little bit more flattering. Okay, so after that, I have this really cute shawl. So I think, Angie, you told me you carry KUMO as well.
Yes.
So this is a shawl that we did in KUMO and Super Sock called the My Chrysalis shawl by Lavanya Patricilla. So it's a really nicely sized shawl, not too triangular. It's like a kind of an asymmetrical triangle, easy to wear. And we used I think we used 2 skeins of KUMO and 1 skein of Super Sock. And it's very easy. So there's a little bit of brioche here and some eyelet lace and garter stitch. And it's just a really nice size. You can just throw this into your bag. And because the KUMO is super soft, it feels like you're wearing like a cloud around your neck.
That's beautiful. What colors are those? Do you know?
So these colors that I used here is Ichigo in KUMO, and it's a Fury. So it's that same color that I used in my my sweater for the main color.
Perfect. Beautiful.
We can move on to some sport samples.
Okay.
All right. So this is another Andrea Mowry pattern. So Andrea has done quite a few designs with Bien Aimee. She originally did the little yellow sweater in Yellow Brick Road in Mondim. And Mondim is a heavy fingering kind of sport weight. So I went ahead and knit little yellow sweater in pink. So this color is called Lee's. And I did this in my merino sport base. So it works out great. It's super nice and soft to wear. Slightly variegated colorway. So I would recommend alternating your skeins when you knit. So this is called Little Yellow Sweater, or I think she actually has it as LYS, LYS on Ravelry. All right, so now we have kind of an iconic Andrea Mowry cardigan. So this is the Rose cardigan. This is the second fade cardigan that Andrea has made using my yarn. The first one that she did was the Comfort Fade in Merino DK.
I love that. I've looked at that pattern. It's a lot.
It's a lot. There's a lot going on. I think Andrea was really trying to experiment with her designing. She did it. It's knit in pieces. There's seaming. There's a knit on border here. So it's definitely going to ask you to kind of flex your knitting muscle a little bit when you knit this one. But it's so nice to wear. I can't even tell you how nice it is.
I've seen it so many times on people, and it's just amazing. I know one person that's on here today. She's I think she may have already attempted it or is pretty close to it. So
I made a gauge swatch.
You did a swatch.
Jody, you made a gauge swatch. That's very good.
That is good. That's gorgeous.
So yeah, so this is what the fade looks like. So this is the damask fade. So it goes from damask to dusk to rose quartz to winter garden in the back here.
Beautiful.
Super nice to wear.
Mm.
Moving on. So I have a couple samples in KUMO because that's another base that you carry. So I have 2 samples of the same pattern, but with different yarns. So this is the Lento sweater. Lento sweater by Yona Haitala. This is like the original. So the original features merino singles and KUMO held double, and it's knit on, I believe it's a 6mm needle. So it's really big needle. So this sweater knits up really fast. Like I remember in 3 days, I had already knit through the yoke. Wow. And done the increases and when splitting for the sleeves. It was like super fast. And it features this really beautiful kind of roll top collar right here, which is really nice. So my first sample I did in singles and KUMO. And the colors I used here are RGO. And at the bottom, I did a slight color block with a color called Coquelicot. It's kind of to show people the difference between RGO, which is orange, and Coquelicot, which is red. And RGO is the special colorway that I made in collaboration with Gigi Made It, Gay Gillespie, you know, the orange lady, if you follow her on Instagram. So this is her colorway.
Beautiful.
And I love this pattern so much that we knit it again, but this time we knit it with KUMO and boucle. So I don't know if you can tell from the screen, but this one's just so much more squishier. It's got a little bit more depth to it. When you touch it, it feels like a marshmallow. The roll collar is super cush and thick. And this is one of my new colors called Peach Sweater. Beautiful. So obviously I had to make myself a sweater in peach sweater. So I had the idea because I just was like, I'm obsessed with this color right now. I feel like I'm just like knitting with it and everything. So yeah. And I knit this one slightly oversized and it's really nice to wear. It's like super cozy. It's like wearing a hug.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm into peachy pinks and reds. I don't know. I mean, Tang started me off, and now I'm gravitate to that. And normally it would just be pink, but or purple, but it's been cool. So, well, I appreciate your time and everything. I know we had a 30-minute window, but is there anything else that you wanted to share, or pretty much that's it? And I love it. Everything was beautiful.
Thank you. Well, I got through all my samples. I just wanted to give maybe 5 minutes if anyone has any questions, if they wanted to type it into the chat. I'm happy to respond to any questions. I love doing these virtual events. It's a really great way to just stay in touch. I haven't been able to get back to doing my knit nights that like I was doing on YouTube. Things have been a little busy. I'm working on my second book right now. And so we're kind of in this busy time of getting things done for the book. But I'm hoping that this fall that we'll be able to start doing some knit nights again. So I see a question popped up in the chat from Joanne. How did you get to Paris from Kansas? Well, that's a good question. So I was born and raised in Olathe, Kansas, which is a suburb of Kansas City. And I studied French at the University of Kansas. And in my 3rd year, I went to study abroad. I spent a year, being a foreign exchange student in France, learning to speak French. I came back from that year completely convinced that I was moving to France. I was like, I have to hurry up and graduate from college and move to France. And so I returned back to Kansas, finished my 4th year of college. And then with the optics of trying to find a job, I somehow convinced my university to hire me and give me a job in France. I went to the study abroad office and I said to them, I was like, you send these foreign students, American students over to a foreign country and they kind of need like a liaison, coordinator. And my director, who was also my advisor, he said to me, he's like, sounds like you have an idea for a job. And so I kind of explained to him, I was like, you're going to help these students, open a bank account, help them get their cell phone if they have any problems or like need to talk to somebody, because that was what was the year that I studied abroad. We didn't have anybody to help us. We just kind of had to do it ourselves. And so they were like, okay. And then they came back and said, okay, we can pay you this small stipend if you'd like to go. And they, you know, they paid for me to fly to France. And it was just enough for me to get a small apartment. And I needed to supplement my income. So I went to the local business school and asked if they were looking for English teachers. And they said that they're actually looking for conversational English teachers. And so they hired me to teach English to business students. And that's how I met my husband. He was in one of my classes. He came to class when I was teaching about current events in the United States, just conversation. And we met in class, and that's how I ended up in France. I met my husband in my classroom.
That's awesome. And so
Yeah.
he's French. He's French.
He's French. Yes. His name is Julien. And we have been married for 20 years and we have 2 kids. We have a boy and a girl.
Wow. Fantastic. Looks like someone's from Ireland.
Yes. So it says, okay, so Carrie's asking, what's the last pattern with the peach? And that last sweater with the peach is the Lento sweater, Lento by Yona Hayatala. And then Claudia's asking, will you ever come to Ireland? Will La Bien Aimee ever be stocked here? I would love to have La Bien Aimee in Ireland. Maybe go to your local yarn shop and ask them if they would be interested in stocking La Bien Aimee. We currently have a few slots left for wholesale, so maybe we can make that happen. That would be so cool.
How is that going for you? I mean, I know that was something new. I meant to ask you as far as something new that you've not done this broad.
We did very little wholesale because I had such a big following through my brick and mortar shop. And so during the pandemic, we had to shut down my brick and mortar, and we tried to open and we had to close again. And in the end, we decided to close permanently the brick and mortar. And because we closed the brick and mortar, I decided to focus on wholesale. So I had to flip my whole business model around so that we would be providing yarn wholesale to shops. As of today, I think we have about over 50 shops that carry La Bien Aimee throughout the world. We continue to travel for events. So our next events that we'll be attending will be Woolen Folk, Rhinebeck weekend.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll be there. And then we will also be going to Barcelona for Barcelona Knit. So we will continue to attend international events and things like that as La Bien Aimee, and support our stockists like Angie and other shops around the world for selling La Bien Aimee.
Well, I thank you so very much for joining us today. And like I said, it's been recorded. So I know I had some folks that couldn't come on, but wanted me to make sure they got a copy. So I'll send it to them. And then I'll write down all these patterns, put it in an email, make sure everyone gets it as well. Thank you again, Aimee. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye. Au revoir.